Good morning, and welcome to Life Sciences BC Showcase Series Surrey. My name is Ryan Budden. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Events with Life Sciences BC, and I would like to invite you to enjoy the event today. So, a couple of housekeeping things before we start is that we encourage you to be as interactive as possible and use our chat function here. Also, you will see the screen there, and if you want to make it full screen, please click on the top right 4 arrows, and that will go into full screen. We also encourage you to post questions in the Q&A section there, and you can also upvote to highlight your most popular question. So if you really like a question, you want it to go up to the top, just click on that and it will go to the top. After all of the presentations are finished, our President and CEO, Wendy Herbert, will be moderating the Q&A section. So please make sure you put lots of great questions in there. Our speakers are all looking forward to hearing them today. After we finish, after the Q&A session, we're going to have 2 8-minute sessions, and so that's going to be some networking. So we encourage you to move to the front of the room and fill those up first. You will also see the organization's names and also our sponsors. So please go and visit our sponsors and visit with our speakers. To move from table to table, you just simply double click on any empty chair to move from table to table. And then we would ask you to introduce yourself for 1 minute, and then you will have 7 minutes of conversation. But please wait for the break to move from table to table. It's a little disruptive to move before the break is there. Also, a reminder to please turn on your camera and your microphone so that everybody can see you and hear you during the networking. Also, a reminder to upload your picture and social media links to make it easier to network. And this webinar will be recorded, and we will send out the link afterwards. So to start today, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Wendy Herbert, who's our President and CEO, to start off the session. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you, Ryan. Welcome everyone to our showcase series focused on Surrey. We're very excited to, as I often say, be here today to host this event virtually. Over the past year, Life Sciences BC and our community have really fortunately embraced virtual events, and we're grateful that we can continue to gather to draw attention to the extraordinary work being done in certain regions around the province. And while it would be great to be able to be together to network, which we will do after this event virtually, and I think we've all gotten used to those types of things, one of the benefits of this being virtual is that we can expand our reach and showcase innovation that's happening in Surrey beyond just the Surrey borders that we would have had if it was a physical in-person event. So as we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining this event from within the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. I'd also like to acknowledge that others are joining us from other traditional and unceded territories across this beautiful province and country. For those of you that do not know, Life Sciences BC is a not-for-profit organization. Our members consist of academia, research institutions, centers of excellence and funding agencies, emerging small and medium-sized businesses, and growing digital health, medtech, therapeutics companies, and in addition, those companies that support the broad life sciences ecosystem. We're funded through membership and the generous contributions of our sponsors and partners. And at this point, I'd like to thank the sponsors that are involved with this event. Silicon Valley Bank and Stem Cell Technologies, our speaker supporters, Clinical Trials BC and the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research, and our event supporter, the Surrey Board of Trade. Thank you very much for your investment in LSBC and the life sciences ecosystem. Your support is invaluable and allows us to do what we are able to do every day. We also like to, at our events, welcome new members to LSBC. So today I'd like to welcome the Beasley Group, Voxcell Bioinnovation, and Platform Life Sciences. Welcome to the Life Sciences family. We're always looking and welcoming new members, so please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if you're interested in membership or our website. So now I'd like to start with our first speaker, Natasha Campbell, who's patiently waiting for me to introduce her. Dr. Natasha Campbell is the Clinical Trials Manager at the Center for Neurology, where she and the CNS team operationalize the research of groundbreaking health interventions with a primary focus on neurorehabilitation. Natasha holds an MSc in Neuroscience from McGill University, certification from the Association of Clinical Research Professionals, and was trained at the Montreal Neurological Institute Clinical Research Unit. Her mission is to connect patients to the latest advances in healthcare by facilitating clinical research in neuroscience, neuroplasticity, and brain health. The CNS is a private clinical research site that administers clinical trials and consulting services specializing in neuroscience. Clinically embedded in Health Tech Conics Inc., a brain technology company focused on cutting-edge neurotech innovations located within the Health and Technology District ecosystem, CNS offers high-quality evaluation and delivery of neuroinnovations while integrating scientific evidence and real-world clinical practices. Thank you, Natasha, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. Thanks for that wonderful intro, and thanks everybody for attending today. I'm just going to go ahead and share my PowerPoint slides and get going. I'll make this full screen. Okay. So hello, my name is Natasha. I'm the Clinical Trials Manager for the Center for Neurology Studies in Surrey, and today I'm going to describe who we are and what we do. We're one of many clinical trial sites across BC, all linked through Clinical Trials BC, which aims to develop BC as a world-class destination for clinical trials across the province's hospitals, research institutions, and communities. To begin, it's really important that I give the context of where all of our research and clinical trials take place, because this is really key to the innovation that happens. So the Center for Neurology Studies, or CNS as we call it, which is sort of our play on central nervous system, is part of a much larger flywheel of 3 organizations that sees every part of a product's life cycle and really bridges the bench to bedside gap by building technologies, testing new health innovations through research, and implementing evidence-based treatments into practice. So the CNS is in the middle as the tester of new health innovations, but once the research is completed, we're actually embedded within a neurophysiotherapy clinic, and the clinicians get access to cutting-edge technologies for their patients. Clinicians can then provide feedback to the manufacturers to help with the design and product development of new technologies, like they do with our sister company, NeuroCatch, that has developed a quick and easy objective measure of brain health using brainwaves. So now that you sort of understand the context of where we are, this is who we are. We have a small core team of clinical trial professionals, and our team expands based on the needs of our clinical studies. Because we're a private company, we have the option to work within the health authority or independently, depending on the needs of the study, the lead physician's affiliations, and importantly, where we need to recruit patients from. So our expanded network includes statisticians, scientists, as well as physicians across BC who act as our principal investigators and complement our 4 therapeutic areas of focus, which are concussion and brain injury, dementia and neurological diseases, post-traumatic stress disorder and mental health, and brain performance and human optimization. In general, all of our research projects fit into one of these 4 therapeutic areas. And I mentioned earlier that our team will expand to fit the needs of a study, and the VLIGHT study is a really good example of how we do that. This study is investigating the effects of transcranial near-infrared light therapy for people with moderate to severe Alzheimer's disease. VLIGHT is a Canadian company out of Toronto that has developed this photobiomodulation technology and devices with a primary focus on devices for home use. And you can see a picture there of the device which emits lights through the scalp as well as up the nose. While for some studies, we have the option to use a private ethics board. For this study, we partnered with Fraser Health and the Division of Neurology head, Dr. Medvedev, because BC legislation stipulates that for studies involving substitute decision makers consenting on behalf of others, like they would in a dementia trial, we must use one of the 11 approved ethics committees, which are the Health Authority and University committees. So for this study, we're partnering with Fraser Health, but performing a lot of the recruitment and assessments through the CNS. And the ethics board that reviews the study really determines where participants can be recruited from. So because the study was approved by Fraser Health, we have the opportunity now to recruit from Fraser Health affiliated locations. So in sum, we're very agile. We're able to scale up to service any project size, and we partner with different physicians, clinicians, and satellite sites to match the needs of each study. We are a full spectrum model. So in addition to running studies that are pre-baked and come to us already planned out, where we're just recruiting and executing the study, a good portion of our time is also spent consulting on the design of studies to help companies or organizations reach their goals. These goals could be generating a study outline to help companies raise capital, or designing and running a study to help support different regulatory applications, or having a study that's able to just confirm statements a company would like to make in their marketing efforts. And because we're entrenched in the larger health and technology district in Surrey, which Rowena will touch on later today, we speak startup, so intellectual property stays with the client, and we can run small proof of concept studies and usability or reliability studies to help companies get to commercialization. So this is just a list of some of the other activities that we do in addition to recruiting and executing studies. And here are a few projects that we worked on over the past few years and sort of where we are with them now. So the PONS project was a pivotal device study. It was a non-invasive tongue stimulation device for the treatment of balance and gait deficits in individuals with traumatic brain injury. We came in as a rescue site after the study had been running for about 2 years with low recruitment. We ended up recruiting over 30 participants, and the end result was a successful Health Canada medical device license application. We then started offering this technology at our own neurophysiotherapy clinic, and since then it has also been approved in Canada and the US for the treatment of balance deficits due to multiple sclerosis. For NeuroCatch, we completed recruitment and data collection to similarly support a successful Health Canada medical device license application for the first version of the device, and we're currently gearing up to run a usability study for version 2.0 of the device. Mindtech Inc. is another Canadian company out of Toronto that has developed a functional electrical stimulation device called the MindMove for individuals with spinal cord injury. It's a Department of Defense funded study with 4 sites across the US and Canada, and we're leading recruitment globally. This study will be running until the end of the summer. And for this one, we're partnering with 3 neuromotion clinics across BC, one in Victoria, one in Surrey, and one in Vancouver. They're a physiotherapy clinic that already had the MindMove device, which has allowed us to greatly expand our reach, and is another example of how we can partner with satellite locations and expand to fit the needs of a study. And then this last one is a knowledge translation study that the CNS was contracted out for. For this, we supported a working group of experts in pain science and helped circulate a survey to their members. And for this, like many of our projects, we came in under budget, and we recently published a study that we'll be presenting actually tomorrow at the Canadian Physiotherapy Association's annual Congress. And we get good reviews. We're very client-centered. We want to make people raving fans. We are quality-focused with our own quality management plan, and we regularly ask for feedback from our clients and our study sponsors and the participants to make sure that we're continuously improving. And that's very important to us. Some of the research studies we do, including case studies from our own clinic, we end up publishing, which again, isn't always typical for a research site or a private company, so we do get to have some fun with that. And here's our list of some of our publications from 2020. And that's about it. So in summary, at the CNS, it's a different way of doing research than what you typically see. The innovation is really that we have that medical device manufacturer, a research site, and a neurophysiotherapy clinic all under one roof. And the wheel spins and really complements what's happening in the public sector. We work synergistically with the universities and the health authorities to try to get evidence-based therapies to individuals as soon as we can. And that's it. So if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out. My email's there.
Thanks very much, Natasha. And Natasha will also be back for the Q&A at the end and part of the networking. So as Ryan just said, please put your questions in the Q&A so that I can refer to them during that session. And Ryan also asked everyone where they're joining from, and I just wanted to welcome the person that is joining us from India. It's nice to have you join us virtually here today. Our next speaker is Dr. Adrian Chan. Dr. Chan is a professor emeritus at the University of Fraser Valley. Her present research and teaching focuses on working with Indigenous peoples, racialized groups, feminist and narrative processes. She's particularly interested in anti-racism, diversity, equity, social justice, inclusion, and addressing normalized practices in organizations. At the University of Fraser Valley, Dr. Chan was in the Faculty of Social Work at the university and was co-founder of the Race and Anti-Racism Network, referred to as RAN, and served as Associate Vice President of Research, Engagement, and Graduate Studies for 6 years. She recently completed a term as the co-chair of the President's Task Force on Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion. Dr. Chan is a 2-time recipient of Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council grant, a 2-time recipient of a CHR grant as well. Her recent work over the last 5 years has focused on Indigenous youth, suicide prevention, and mental wellness. She is published in Canadian and international journals and books. Dr. Chan is a trainer, educator, and consultant who has worked in the field for over 30 years. We're thrilled to have you join us, Dr. Chan, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you very much, Wendy, and thank you for all who are participating today. I'm just going to share my screen.
Great.
Thank you. So my focus is on Indigenous youth, culture, and mental wellness, the most recent work that I've been doing. And I would also like to acknowledge that I live and work on the traditional and historical territory of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The work that I have done is on the traditional unceded territory of the Stolo people of the river, Sokchumos. And it's important that I acknowledge that we are all grateful to be able to live and work on this traditional territory. The purpose of my work has been focused on understanding and promoting land-based resiliency in Indigenous youth as a way of primary prevention against suicide. By primary prevention, we mean maintaining wellness before youth are depressed, anxious, or in isolation, before they have suicidal thoughts. The research was meant to document promising practices so that we could share those with other communities. And the documentation was called the Knowledge Basket. Within that, a sub-purpose of our research was to decolonize and indigenize research and the way we reported our research. The work that we did was supported by CIHR and the Michael Smith Foundation, also by Fraser Health and Vancouver Coastal Health. We worked with multiple communities, including Seabird Island Band, Scalawat's Nation, Samath Nation, Yakukus Nation, and the Mission Friendship Center, where we were all part of knowledge sharing. So we're looking at primary prevention and mental wellness, and in doing this, we have realized through the literature and through other research that wellness is connected to culture. And for us, this also means reconnecting to the land and the identity and belonging of youth and their connection to their elders and their ancestors. Resiliency was a focus of our work, and the meaning of resiliency is the ability to bounce back, to have inner resources to carry on. And if you think about yourself, sometimes you don't feel very resilient, and youth often feel that they're quite depleted. So our goal was really to build up that resilience. And land-based activities with the youth were a way of doing that. As I mentioned, our work was conducted in the Fraser Valley in the territory of the Stolo people. And we relied on youth stories, traditional teachings, and land stewardship to guide us in this process. We talked about community-based research in which the activities were driven by the First Nations communities. They participated in our decision-making. That meant the youth and the elders. We had established relationships with the chiefs and how the work was being carried out. We also had touchback communication with the chiefs and elders So there was ongoing interaction. Half of our team was Indigenous, and as a non-Indigenous person, I was therefore working with an Indigenous researcher. We follow the concept of two-eyed seeing, which is about being able to bring our sets of two eyes, our own cultures, our own awareness into the research relationship. In the highlighted box, I identify a number of activities that we held on the land, such as hikes, walks, camps, land stewardship, plant identification, tree identification, language learning, and so on. All of these activities were really about teaching about the land, the ancestral and generational aspect of these activities. So a tree is not just a tree. It's about the people, it's about the connection to our ancestry. A hike is not just a hike. It's about being on the land and knowing what that means to be on the land. The principles of our work were guided by Stolo principles, friends working together, reciprocity, knowing that everything is connected. The land is connected to air, water, fire, spirit, and also looking back is looking forward. This means that we are guided by the relationships and the history of the past. It's also about the relationships that we have in present day in order to work with each other on a project in a community. Our work was documentary and it's qualitative. So I'm a social scientist, not a scientist. And as Wendy mentioned, a lot of my work is in narrative. So we used Indigenous research methods. We were using non-Western terminology to describe our work. For instance, we didn't use the terms data, we didn't use the words analysis. We measured resiliency as a connection to the land, and we did that through stories, through what the youth told us. They told us stories in circle, in gatherings. We also did digital storytelling with them. We also had our own observations and impressions of what they shared with us. But everything we did, we shared by permission of the youth. Nothing was done otherwise because the knowledge and the experiences belong to the youth. And at the bottom there's a quote, "I wasn't much connected to the land until they got me singing and drumming. That's how I met my friends and started connecting to the land." So when you think about it, what does the land mean to us? What does it mean to you? For example, in Indigenous people's world, the importance of cedar is really quite paramount. Cedar is the mother tree. It's a tree of life. It provides shelter, it provides clothing, it provides implements, the baskets. It also provides a sense of spirituality. So there's two quotes there from our youth. "We go to the cedar tree to sit when we are sad, lonely, and tired." It's a process of regeneration. But also they recognize the importance of cedar in ceremony, of the cedar bough, the boughs, and also using cedar to heal. So a tree is not just a tree. Cedar tree is more than a cedar tree. In terms of culture, many of you have maybe thought about culture. It's the customs, social norms, and relationships that we have, the achievements within a community or in a nation, and language, spiritual practices, and medicines. For Indigenous people, culture is a kind of medicine to them. It's about the connection to the land, which is healing, and it provides a kind of continuity to who we are, to our elders. It provides a sense of belonging and contributing. A number of studies have talked about the role of family in terms of connection and communication for mental health, mental wellness, and that's a part of culture, the family. Cultural continuity is a term that has been used in mental health research and has been guiding us as a means of suicide prevention. There's quite a bit of literature about that in terms of cultural continuity. Now, my presentation is largely focused on the process and the relationships that we had with our youth and with our communities. However, we did have significant incomes, and these have been documented through the stories and the digital stories. A number of our experiences were also videoed, and so we have videography, we have YouTube links that show the experiences of our youth and the stories that they told us. Our outcomes show that youth do feel better about themselves as they become more connected to the land, to their culture. They think about what health means to them. They even talked about how at the gatherings they didn't want to eat pizza. They'd rather eat healthier foods. They talked about the value of place, the land, and the connection. We went to visit places such as the Dry Rack near Boston Bar, which is where they dried fish historically. There is a value in being able to visit different communities. The youth, when we were having larger gatherings, were able to go back and forth. In 2020, of course, during COVID, there was limited activity, but when we were able to, we had small gatherings of 5 or 6 youth. We could go out onto the land, again, plant medicines, identification, being able to walk and hike on the land. But as well, we set up touch points where the kids could Zoom with each other, get counseling, and be connected in a different way. So being able to find different ways of connection was very important to us. And they learned through that they could maintain that connection and not be disconnected from their peers, from their elders, and from the youth workers, their counselors. Ultimately, we developed alternative ways of describing analysis. In the picture there, you see a weaving, and I have used that weaving to describe our analysis of our findings. So you see on the side there, the river, you see trees, you see houses. In the circle there, you see youth who are gathering. And so that's how we describe the work that we did in alternative ways. I know it's a little bit different from a number of presentations that are going on today, so it's something to think about research differently. We're now just completing our final report on what we did, and much appreciation is expressed to CIHR and the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chan. That was very interesting, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions about that. As you've been talking, people have also been acknowledging some of the traditional territories that they're joining us from, which is really, really fun to see. Our next speaker is Anne Woods. Anne is the Managing Director of the Life Sciences and Healthcare Practice for the Silicon Valley Bank, where she's responsible for leading the bank's efforts in this sector across Canada. Anne has close to 25 years experience in capital markets and life sciences. She began her career as a financial analyst and in 2005 went back to her roots in life sciences. Prior to joining SVP, Anne spent years as a director of the Pangea Group, bringing insights and strategic direction to the life sciences and healthcare clients that she served. In 2018, Anne joined the board of Life Sciences Ontario. She holds a BSc from McGill University and an MA from the University of Guelph. She's also a CFA charter holder. And as a passionate leader in the life sciences sector, she generously volunteers a great deal of her time supporting the life sciences ecosystem across Canada, and we're very grateful for that. Over to you, Anne.
Thanks, Wendy. I'm just going to share my screen.
And Anne is joining us from Toronto.
I am, yeah. Where my kids are at home and I've got a barking dog and all kinds of things going on in the background. So
it's just a regular day at a virtual webinar.
Indeed. How's that? Slides are good?
Perfect.
So I do always feel a little boring when I have to go after some of the researchers and scientists that present at these events. But I also at the same time think that what we do at Silicon Valley Bank is, a really, really wonderful thing for all of that wonderful science and research, because we've really done a lot of work over the last 30 years, becoming the sort of the banking partner to the life science and healthcare community. So much so that in the U.S. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 65% of companies that raise their first round of capital, their Series A round, look to SVB to be their banking partner. And then, if we sort of look out into the companies that are really successful in going public, 70% of life science companies that have gone public in the last 3 years bank with SVB. So we've really developed a great expertise and a network and access to insights that's unparalleled, and that's provided me with the opportunity to do presentations like this, because we are sitting on all this information. And so what I thought I would do today is just talk a little bit about where we are now from an investments perspective. What sort of momentum we're seeing in 2021, how Canada is participating in that momentum, and then really what we can do to make sure that we maintain that in Canada, because I think that there's really a lot of opportunity right now, and we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. So this is a slide that we pulled together at early this year, and I guess that the essence of it is that what you can see is this sort of up and to the right in terms of venture capital dollars invested in the life science and healthcare sector. And so the question was, with 2020 being such a great year, were we going to see things dropping off in 2021? And hot off the presses, our Q1 data has showed, not on this chart, but I do have some information, and there's some numbers in the text on the left if you want me to share these slides after. But Q1 actually blew away the previous record, which was the third quarter of last year. And so we saw $22 billion invested into venture-backed life science companies. So that absolutely, not just sort of blew away, kind of smashed that record of 15 billion in Q3. And so it was really biopharma and health tech that were leading that. So biopharma companies raised over $10 billion in the first quarter of this year, and health tech companies raised over $7 billion in the first quarter of this year. And I think there was, a couple of interesting things that we saw there is, we typically think of Series A rounds being these small $5 to $10 million initial investments. But what we saw was a lot of Series A rounds that were over $50 million. And we even saw that here in Canada with Notch Therapeutics, that's sort of based out of Toronto and Vancouver, raising a Series A that was $85 million. Well, there was a time where that was large for a Series C round, not a Series A round. And the other thing that we're seeing is investors that typically would invest in companies later are investing earlier and earlier, because for two reasons. One, they know if they don't get in early, they're not going to be able to get in, and two, the technology is being developed at such a rapid pace that these investors are coming in early, thinking we're going to this company's going to be going public in probably 18 months. And of course, we saw that with AbCellera in Vancouver. That company really scaled up really quickly, and of course had a great IPO in December. I think the other thing that's worth calling out for any of you that are in the device space is 2020 was a pretty tough year for medical device companies, because people couldn't get into hospitals, and there wasn't ways to do some of the trials around medical devices. We really saw some of the investment sort of drop off, and we predicted that early stage investment in medical device companies would go up in the first quarter of this year, and we were really happy to see that there was $376 million in 36 early stage deals across North America and Europe. So quite happy to see that the renewed interest in medical device. I think the only thing that's maybe a bit of a red flag for us, and especially in biopharma, is these valuations are getting so high that people are starting to wonder about two things: are they too high, and does this sort of reduce that optionality to go public and access public equity markets, because is there any additional value that they can get out of those public equity markets? But suffice it to say, this has been the absolute longest bull market in the life science and biotech community ecosystem in history. And so I guess, the question is, has Canada participated in this boom? And I think the answer to that question is a resounding yes. And so I think there's a few things that jump out. And of course, we saw 3 of the largest biotech IPOs in Canadian history last year. We continue to see IPOs this year. Our early stage deals, our median early stage deal in Canada last year was actually higher than the US and Europe. And then of course, BC is a bit of the darling of Canada when it comes to life sciences. So, this is just a snapshot of some of the companies that are in BC, but, what we're really seeing is, it's a more mature environment. We're starting to see some of the impacts, what we saw in Waterloo and Ontario with BlackBerry is now all these ex-BlackBerry people have started new companies, and that's starting to happen in BC, where you're seeing people go from one success story to another. And I think Stem Cell Technologies is absolutely one of those companies that's really, I don't know if the right word is sort of, spitting out talent to other companies. But we've got a long way to go. So when you look at the deals being done in the bottom right here, there's still plenty of room for us just to reach even 10% of the US. So I like the idea that we're, got good momentum, and, even if we just get to 10% of the US, we're still going to probably quadruple where we are now. So I think that actually, I'm quite optimistic about that, because I think there's lots of really exciting things going on here. And just sort of circling back to BC, I think, it's important to remember that BC is, the sector is faster growing than anywhere else in Canada, but it also attracts an outsized amount of venture capital dollars. So when you look at the total amount of venture capital dollars in BC that are invested, 40% of those dollars go into life science companies, versus the rest of Canada, where only 15% of the overall capital is going into life sciences companies. So all of this means that, we continue to be really excited about the sector. But, what do we do to make sure that we take advantage of this and that we continue to succeed? And so I kind of, after listening to a lot of people talk, I've sort of bucketed these into 3 kind of key areas. And I think that, I feel like the mindset piece, we've really, 5 years ago, I may not have said we had the right mindset. I think we do now. I think we've got both entrepreneurs and investors outside of Canada looking to Canada for success. So we've got a track record of successful entrepreneurs, and we've got people that are willing to take risks and not just develop the intellectual property and then hand it off to somebody else to commercialize it. I developed this slide before the most recent budget, but I'm happy to say that we are seeing some political will to really support the sector. And so, we need things, of course, like capital from the federal government, but we also need to have conversations around intellectual property laws and tax policies that not only make Canada attractive for us to keep our intellectual property here, but I don't think there's any reason why we can't attract intellectual property here. And so I think, different provinces are doing different things, but, that's going to be a really important piece to continued success. And you often hear people talk about access to capital as an issue. And I really look at that as not just access to sort of, dollars and cents, but really what we need is a continuous supply of intellectual capital. So we need that basic research coming out of universities. Of course, we need access to talent. And then, one of the things that I'm hearing a lot of right now is we really need access to sort of capital assets. So lab space. So companies are now getting to that stage where, they need to move out of the incubator or the accelerator that they're part of, and they need to move into, lab space that can handle, 100 researchers and not just 10. And so, that's sort of a gap that I think needs to be filled right now. And there's a lot happening. We're going to hear a little bit about that later, really helping build up that sector. So I think the real key thing here is that, all mindset, policy, and capital are all really, they sort of work together like gears to drive the sector. But I'm pretty optimistic about what's happening, especially in BC, but broadly in Canada. And I do think that the rest of Canada can learn a lot from the success in BC. So I think with that, I'll hand the floor back to Wendy, and happy to answer any questions that you have at the end of the session.
Thank you very much, Anne. I always enjoy your synopsises and wish I could take notes fast enough. But I think you've also really given us some great insight into the capital flow and the importance of that tied with talent and intellectual and innovation capital. And I think it's important that as we, you've grounded us also in the fact that while we've seen extraordinary momentum over the last year in some segments of the life sciences sector, we still have opportunity to grow to be at that classic 10% of the US marker that I've been in numerous industries in my career. It's always the 10% rule. So good to know that our aspirational goals are actually attainable, and it's wonderful to see the stats, but to also have your thoughts on where we're going next. So we really appreciate having you support not only this event, but all of the comments that you always bring forward.
Thanks, Wendy.
So our next speaker is Rowena Rosati. She's been a highly successful healthcare leader with more than 35 years experience in executive level leadership roles across multi-site complex health and business environments. Rowena served as the Chief Operating Officer for BC's Northern Health Authority, among other healthcare leadership roles, including senior leadership of Fraser Health's clinical programs and operations, and the development of the 500 million clinical care tower in Surrey. Rowena developed the research and innovation strategy for Fraser Health in 2012, is a co-founder of the Legion Veterans Village, and was a visionary behind the Health and Technology District. Rowena serves as the Vice President of Healthcare and Innovation for two private health sector companies, is an advisor member of the Conference Board of Canada Council for Innovation and Commercialization, and is a mentor for SFU's Beatty School of Business. Rowena, we're thrilled to have you here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here because I'm actually going to get to speak on two of my really favorite things, and that's healthcare innovation and ecosystems and Surrey. So welcome everyone to a little bit about some great things that are happening in Surrey, and I'm pleased to be able to share some of those. My apologies. My lovely colleague here, Tim, is going to help me with these slides. So Tim, if we could just move to the next slide, please. But I'm really going to focus the conversation, and I'll try to do this very quickly because there's lots to tell in a short period of time. But the concept here was around building those ecosystems, as Anne just suggested, are going to be imperative in order to catalyze and galvanize all the great things that are happening in BC around life sciences. And that concept was a vision many, many years ago that has now come to a fruition that we're really proud to share. So I'm going to show you a very short video, and then we'll dive into a few of the details around what's happening in Surrey in our Health and Technology District. Tim, are we okay with that video?
The Health and Technology District is an innovative ecosystem of the world's brightest.
I can't see it. I don't know if others can see it, Tim.
Scientists and advanced solutions to market. Solutions to market. Located in the city of Surrey, British Columbia, housed in state-of-the-art facilities.
We're having some technical difficulties.
It will be the largest of its kind in Canada and will contain a city centre. Over 1 million. The Health and Technology District to use space.
Oops.
Apologies, it doesn't seem to be playing for us. Perhaps we can just move on to the next slide.
You bet. I'll try to tell you what was going to be in 2 minutes. I'll try to do that in 2 minutes as quickly as I can. So the Health and Technology District emerged out of Surrey as a part of the critical care tower in 2012, and it was a $500 million investment. At the time, Surrey being a very, very busy community hospital, but it needed to transform itself into becoming a critical care tower with tertiary level services and to attract academic and clinical research clinicians. And that had not been a part of the culture in the past, so it really required a culture shift. We looked at all the great assets that British Columbia had and realized that Surrey also had its assets in the diversity of the population, the growth of the population, the youth of the population. And so we created a innovation and health strategy that was going to see Surrey as creating the ecosystem whereby we would see the translation of some of this groundbreaking first-in-man research into actual health outcomes, and how do we get it into the hands of clinicians. So it was raising literacy for clinicians, raising literacy around entrepreneurs, researchers, and scientists, and happened to join forces with the Lark Group, who had all the property across the street from Surrey Memorial. They were able to build the spaces then that would allow this to occur. So next slide, please, Tim. So what we see now and what has emerged since 2012 is the creation of this ecosystem. We are 500,000 square feet of a 1.5 million square foot development, or a series of 8 towers. The third tower is open. The spaces are completely full. It's become a clinical community. There's over 120 medical specialty practices there representing every clinical discipline. And embedded here in the Health Tech Innovation Hub is 25,000 square feet, where we're seeing researchers and scientists engaging and interfacing with clinicians and collaborating and creating the ability to accelerate some of their brilliant ideas into clinical practice, and then being able to utilize this setting to have access to the clinicians and clinical environments to prototype and validate. And then, as Natasha mentioned earlier, also clinical trials. And because we have such a captive audience there with, thousands of patients a day that come through, it's also great for subject recruitment and things like that. What we've also seen, which has been quite unique, is that it has become an environment for teaching and learning. And in the past, many would think that it was a single post-secondary institution that would have a presence, but rather what we have found here is multiple research institutions working in collaboration, other local colleges, and it even went so far that we created the first private school. And the private school, is graduating young people who are now inspired into STEM programs. They have access to co-op opportunities and engage with the private sector, whether it's health and or technology companies. And that then has attracted more technology companies to want and have access to some of that talent. So at the end of the day, this has become a very significant economic and business driver for the city of Surrey that, we discovered somewhat organically through the development of this model. So next slide, please, Tim. I'll go through this quickly. So one of the first ones, I want to give this example. Many of you may have heard it before, but we did have gamers that were working on technology, EA Sport type of games. They were engaged then with the surgeons. The surgeon brought them into their surgical theater, and before you know it, they collaborated and developed what is now known as Periopsim, and it's a virtual reality surgical training tool for nurses and clinicians, and it's now in 200 hospitals across North America. So that's just one example. Next slide, please. The learning environment, as we said, it was really important to not only just have researchers and scientists located adjacent to clinicians, but we also, Natasha talked about the clinical services that they have actually operating there. We have other clinical services that actually operate within this environment. And we think that it really supports the innovation that entrepreneurs are developing in that they get exposure. They get exposure to clients, they get exposure to families, they get exposure to those experiences that are going to make a difference around how successful they're going to be when they want to bring their product or their solution to market. And we think that they've greatly benefited from that. Next slide, please, Tim. I won't spend too much time on this, but I will, just because of the questions that were on the panel here. We have a great deal because our co-founder, Dr. Ryan Darcy, was a neuroscientist. He's attracted other neuroscientists they were able to engage significant funding to implement an image tech lab, which is a 3 Tesla MRI and an MEG at Surrey Memorial Hospital that's used exclusively for research purposes. So obviously these are the instruments that the neuroscientists want to have access to do their great things in trying to solve issues around mental health, brain health, and otherwise. So it very much, we call it a neurocentricity that we have out in Surrey as well, and that's becoming an asset for all of Surrey. Next slide, please, Tim. And finally, an economic driver. So when this ecosystem is fully completed, there's 15,000 jobs, many of those high-paying tech jobs, clinical jobs. There's billions of dollars annually into the local economy, and so this is very significant from the economics and the business community. And I'm sure Anita will speak to that as far as it having some of those outputs that were not necessarily anticipated in the beginning. Next slide, please, Tim. We're fortunate because as a result of this, we're being recognized for this type of cluster building and now have been engaged in other organizations to ask us to do the same. So in Surrey, again, in Whalley, we're creating the first Legion Veterans Village. And I'll just maybe move to 2 slides down if I could quickly, Tim. Yeah, there we go. Legion Veterans Village. So this is an example. This is a $300 million building, Center of Excellence, mental health for PTSD for veterans and for it's coming out of the ground. It will be focused on research, and we've just gotten access to our first research funding. So this type of an ecosystem is possible. This is emerged out of the district. And then just quickly 2 slides down again, please, Tim. Just rushing through this. So as a result of this, we're now building a second health and technology district in St. John, New Brunswick. And again, that ecosystem imperative to have the assets such as the hospital, Horizon Health Hospital, University of New Brunswick, Dalhousie Medicine, and now we'll have 3 phase towers there that will create a health and technology district coast to coast so that we can start to build out these models to be a platform to accelerate all the great things that are happening here in BC and elsewhere. So I'll stop there because I know I'm out of time. Thanks for your time.
Thanks very much, Rowena. Apologies about the video. We'll see whether we can get it posted in the chat or something. Very interesting and nice to hear about the successes of the district and how it's expanding into New Brunswick. I wasn't aware of that. Our next speaker is Dr. David Llewellyn. He is the Chief Commercial Officer at Stem Cell Technologies, Canada's largest biotechnology company. David is a champion of stem cells' mandate to advance science, which he supports at the executive level by ensuring the company is well positioned for long-term growth and profitability. David started his career at Stem Cell in 2006 as a business development officer. Today, he oversees the company's marketing, communications department, pricing, e-commerce division, and several of its product teams. He has a BSc in chemistry from the University of Northern BC, a PhD in organic chemistry from McGill University, and an MBA in strategic management from the University of British Columbia. I think we've been over-indexed on McGill graduates today, so congratulations. You guys should all connect during the networking. David is also a member of the Life Sciences BC Board of Directors, where he generously contributes his time. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Wendy.
Looks good.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to start with just this slide here before we talk about stem cell, because I think this really highlights the role stem cell plays in health science research. So we are not a drug development company or a therapeutics company. We are a reagent and supplies company. So we provide the tools that scientists use to develop their drugs and vaccines and therapeutics, as well as some of the raw materials that they use to manufacture them. So what I wanted to highlight in this slide is that if you look at how we treat disease has changed over the last 50 years. There's been 2 major transitions, one of which we're going through right now. Prior to the 1980s, it was very focused on small molecules as treatment for disease. And then there was a shift in the 90s to the use of biologics, and that really opened up the door to treat a lot of conditions that you couldn't treat with small molecules. And we're seeing a very similar shift occur, right now at this time, where there's the introduction of cell therapies, where you're using you're taking out people's cells, you're gene editing them or reprogramming them to do something specific, and then you're re-injecting them as a way to treat disease. And there's a lot of success here as well, and it looks like this is going to play a major role in terms of how we treat things like cancer and other diseases in the future. And if you go back and you look at how these transitioned occurs from small molecules to biologics and from biologics to cell therapies, those transitions were largely driven by the underlying technologies that became available at the time. So that transition from small molecules to biologics was driven a lot by, the advancements in proteomics and genomics and the ability to make recombinant proteins. And this shift from biologics to cell therapies, that's being driven by advancements in stem cell research. It's being driven by some major advancements over the last couple of years in gene editing and things like this. And I think this is an important point to make because it's those underlying technologies. That's the types of products that stem cell develops themselves. It's the ones that really enable the research so that these important therapies can be developed. So just a little bit of a background for stem cell. So stem cell is Canada's largest biotechnology company. We are a privately held company, so we don't have any investors. It's a family-owned business. We are profitable, so we just we grow and fund our operations through the sales of our products. And typically, we grow about 20% per year. Our head office is in Vancouver, British Columbia. About 85% of our operations are in Vancouver. We have about 1,200 people here. So if you look at some of our facilities, this 1618 Station Street, that's our research and development facility right across the street from Science World. That's where all the great products are developed. The 57 West 7th, this is by the BC Cancer Agency. This is we have our manufacturing suite here. The 750 West Pender Street is our sales office. And then the 8255 Northway is our distribution center. And then we also have a new facility in Burnaby in Production Way. This is quite a large warehouse. It's several 100,000 square feet. And we're consolidating a lot of our operations here. So I think we've already shut down just recently our West Pender office, and now all of our sales office is moving out to Burnaby. So some of the product lines that we offer, we really are a cell biology company. So we provide products, we help customers source the cells that they need to do their research. We have technologies around how to purify specific cell types. So if you want to isolate a T cell or a B cell or an NK cell or something like that, to give you primary cells, and you can take those primary cells. We offer products to culture those primary cells or reprogram them, for example, to iPS cells, to give cultured cells, and then the downstream assays that you would use those cells. So some of our major product lines again are cell separation reagents, cell culture reagents, things like cytokines, antibodies, small molecules. We have CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing tools, instrumentation, and contract assay services. And I think one of the key differentiators for stem cell relative to other companies is because it's a private company and we don't have any external investors, we're very, very focused on the science. So our decisions on what products to develop and what we're doing is largely driven by being able to advance the field. So we'll focus on products that enable research and advance the field over products that could potentially have a larger market opportunity. That's really, again, just really our focus on science. We believe that that's what's necessary, and that's how we're going to be most successful in the long term. So just an example of one of our product portfolio of products. This is our cell separation technology. So if you want to isolate a specific cell type, the way that this technology works is you have a magnetic particle here in orange. That's a highly magnetic particle. It's cross-linked to an antibody that's specific for the cell type of interest. And so when you link that antibody to the cell that you want to isolate, and then you put the complexed cell into a strong magnet, you can kind of pull the cell out of that solution and separate it. So we have a series of different magnets for various scales or the type of research people are working, as well as we have automated instrumentation for people who want to automate the process or potentially need higher throughput. So we also have a very highly educated sales force and a well-established distribution channel. So we sell all over the world. Probably only about 3% of our revenue is actually generated in Canada. Most of it's generated in the US, Europe, and China. So in the orange, you have our direct sales force. So we have offices again in Canada. We have distribution and sales in the United States. We have a sales office, marketing, and a distribution center in Cambridge, Massachusetts. 3 European sites that are largely sales and distribution, except for the UK, which we have recently set up a research and development team in the UK. Then a couple offices in China and several offices in Asia Pacific. So really the ability to serve all the major markets where there's life science research going on directly. And so for those smaller markets, the ones you see in black, we serve those largely through our network of distributors that we partner with. So we're investing heavily in biologics manufacturing. I think one thing COVID has done is it's really highlighted the importance of biomanufacturing. So we are investing $140 million in the building of that facility in Burnaby. It's an advanced biologics manufacturing facility. We got $45 million in support from the provincial and federal government to build this, and we expect that facility to open up in 2022. And what this facility does is it gives us the capability to manufacture products in a GMP environment. And so we can already do that. A good part of that is already done. And we're now offering products that are manufactured under the GMP quality system. And this is important because you need the media products and other products to be manufactured in that GMP environment in order to use them for manufacturing cell therapies or in order to use them for manufacturing things like vaccines. So this facility really will make us a leader in the cell therapy ancillary reagents market. So I just wanted to just expand on that a little bit. Again, there's a lot of emphasis on biomanufacturing in Canada, and usually what you see a lot of talk about the ability to manufacture vaccines and therapeutics and diagnostics. And again, this is an area that stem cell could play an important role. You don't just have to have the ability to manufacture the vaccine, you also have to secure the supply chain the next level down. And a lot of the shortages that you're seeing in vaccines and diagnostics is actually a shortage in the materials that are going in to manufacture them, not necessarily the capacity to manufacture itself. And so some of the areas where we can play an important role here is, for vaccine development, mRNA vaccine development, for example, the culture media to make the plasmids, and a lot of the enzymes that are needed in order to make the RNA and the vaccines themselves. And the same thing for diagnostics. Really the PCR-based diagnostics are an enzymes-based technology, and so the enzymes, being able to make those enzymes on scale and purify them, being them and vial them at scale, and then to manufacture the magnetic particles that are used to do the RNA extraction. These are all areas that are, core to the expertise that we have right now at the company. So I'll just kind of end on this slide. So, we are growing very quickly, and we expect that to continue over the next 5 to 10 years. There's no indication that it's going to slow down. So we're planning to hire about 5,000 people in the upcoming years, and we have about $1 billion that we're going to be investing in R&D. So, if you are interested, if you're kind of just graduating and you're looking for that first opportunity, we would absolutely love to hear from you. This is if you want to reach out to someone, you can reach out to Christian Grench. She's one of our scientific recruiters, and there's her email address if you want to contact her and talk some more about the opportunities at Stem Cell. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David. Great overview. And while I've heard your presentations a few times, it seems there's always new news that is happening, and nice to see the progress on the new site. And always good to hear that people are hiring. So Stem Cell is such an important company within our ecosystem, but as David said, it's the largest biotechnology company in Canada with extensive operations globally. So again, wonderful to have you here. Stem Cell as an organization is extremely supportive of the scientific community and not only growing the company, but also growing talent and being a source of talent. So as David said, if you're interested in this particular area, it would be a great place to both start your career and continue your career. The next speaker is Anita Huberman, no stranger to most of us on the line. She's the CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. She's also on the SFU President's Advisory Council and the SFU India Advisory Council. She is the co-chair of the Surrey Local Immigration Partnership Committee, and nationally she's been a trustee of Canada's National Film Board for 6 years. She holds the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal and was the recipient of the 2011 Business in Vancouver's Top 40 Under 40 Award, and was recognized with Canada's 150 Community Medal. Anita has been a trailblazer advocating for change for business and for Surrey and at all levels of government. Over to you, Anita.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And I'm so pleased again that Life Sciences BC has chosen Surrey as an area to showcase and as an area from which to partner with as well. I'm coming to you today from the treaty territory of our Tsawwassen First Nation and the unceded territory of our Coast Salish people, specifically the Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. As mentioned, I'm CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. We are a Surrey city building business organization. Our whole mandate is to support business and bring business into the city. Surrey is going to be the largest city in British Columbia, they're now saying, by 2030. And I think that's really important because the investments that are needed in order to really ensure that Surrey has the infrastructure to thrive and survive means a collaboration between all levels of government and all different stakeholders. And that also includes our international relationships. So our purpose is within a very diversified service portfolio, serving over 6,000 member contacts and being one of the top 10 largest chambers of commerce and boards of trades in the country. There's 450 of us. We are instigating change at the different levels of government. We are providing and being that concierge of connections, even during the pandemic, by having British Columbia's only rapid response pandemic center. And of course, we have an international trade center where we are creating global business connections for local businesses. And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. I think it's really important for you, ladies and gentlemen, to recognize that not only do we have a thriving health and technology district, that's not only about health technology, but so many different other types of technology. But it's also the fact that we have the greatest number of manufacturers within British Columbia. A third of our land base is agricultural, and there's a significant amount of agri-tech that is taking place within our city in collaboration with our local universities. And a third of our population is under the age of 19. And 40% of our population is under the age of 30. We speak 104 different languages within our Surrey. The human capital, the industrial land that we have is greater than any other city in Metro Vancouver, where we hold 27% of land where we can build from, whereas Vancouver has to build up. And we're a border city, we're an international docking facility, and we're part of that Cascadia economic region, where we're next door to Washington State, working very closely with our Chamber of Commerce and economic agencies in Washington State, in Oregon, and of course, within British Columbia. We're one of 9 organizations that sit on the Premier's Economic Recovery Task Force because we are looking at gaps and opportunities during the pandemic. And we know the pandemic has created not only challenges, but also opportunities, a bridge from which that healthcare and business and the economy has never seen before. So I just wanted to just indicate that, the way that we're looking at specific technologies, the way that we're looking at upskilling and reskilling during the pandemic are all of the pieces that the Surrey Board of Trade has been focused on and been a leader on. We created Canada's first COVID-19 playbook for business to help workforces navigate, thrive, and survive during this pandemic. And yes, we also want to ensure that we're creating those global partnerships with Silicon Valley, with our technology firms across the border, but also internationally, whether it's with Ireland, whether it's with India, whether it's with Israel. Those global partnerships have always been a cornerstone and foundation of our city. But I want you to know that it's not only about investing in Vancouver, it's not only about creating partnerships in Vancouver, it's about investing in Surrey. Because 1.3 million people are going to be moving into the Metro Vancouver region by 2050, and many of them will be living, working, learning, and playing in Surrey and in the South Fraser Economic Region, all the way to Abbotsford. And all of our South Fraser cities, Surrey, Langley, Abbotsford, we're all working together to ensure that that South Fraser Economic Region and our international relationships around tech investments, international partnerships and collaborations are at the heartstone and foundation of that ecosystem that is really going to nurture the life sciences industry within British Columbia. And certainly, we have been speaking with the BC government in an ongoing way, not only with the Minister of Economic Recovery and Innovation and Technology, Minister Kalon, but also in relation to the new initiative called NBC. And that is a new strategic investment fund. It's meant to really invest in businesses, in technology, in startups, to commercialize them. And certainly it needs to be passed legislatively through the House, through the BC government. That's taking place hopefully this month and will be implemented this fall. So already we're sending leads to the BC government for investment through this fund. And certainly one example is a robotics manufacturing firm that's currently based in Burnaby that wants to expand into Surrey. And it's all about leveraging the funds and the relationships within the government, not only provincially, but also federally. So the Surrey Board of Trade, even though we're a not-for-profit, we're your counterpoint, your foundation in terms of connections that you need. But I also wanted to say that we're also your cornerstone and foundation for government advocacy. We're leaders in terms of the profile to instigate change on some very challenging and difficult and sometimes uncomfortable issues for many. But sometimes it's those uncomfortable issues that really ensure that our city remains vibrant. And of course, you can check out our website, businessinsurrey.com, for all of those different issues. But I wanted to mention some specific items related to the Life Sciences BC and tech firms that we're focusing on through the federal lens and also the provincial lens. And so there are a combination of conversations that we're having with federal ministers, including the Western Economic Diversification Minister, Melanie Joly, who is having an office right here in British Columbia. And we're lobbying for that to be positioned right here in Surrey. It only makes sense for that office to be here in Surrey if they're going to invest in British Columbia. So we want to make sure that the federal government and the provincial government are being nimble and adaptable. They need to address sourcing, procurement, partnerships. They need to reduce the administrative burden. Number two, they really need to make sure at both the provincial and federal level, which we have been advocating for, a comprehensive tax review to really ensure that the bottom line for businesses is being focused on and that tax code is as simple as possible so we're able to compete on a global level. Because right now, our tax code, provincially and federally, is way too complicated. And even other business organizations have been calling for that as well. We need focused funding, like in BC. And we need to make sure that all levels of companies have access to that funding and that it's easy, and that boards of trades, chambers of commerce are able to be that conduit to ensure that delivery, as well as Life Sciences BC and organizations of like-minded delivery. We need to have intentional investments to ensure that we're tying industry needs to skills development. During this pandemic, we have seen that you can't have education delivery the way that it has been. We really need to innovate in our education system. And so we're working with our universities, but also our private colleges and universities to ensure that we're tying those industry needs to curriculum development. There needs to be a revitalization, a remobilization of that. And we need to, and we've been saying this for so long, even before the pandemic, that we need to market Surrey. We need to market Canada and all of the technology that has previously been spoken of, and even the philosophies around Indigenous leadership on the global stage. Because Canada is a leader, but we need to really ensure we're talking about the results and the actions we currently have. Because that is the only way, that whole marketing piece, that we're going to be assured of Canada economic leadership. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Surrey is positioned to be part of a bright future. We're ready. We have the human capital. We have the land. We have the partnerships locally, nationally, internationally. And the Surrey Board of Trade, we're part of that ecosystem with our health and technology district, with our different levels of government. And I look forward to any questions that you may have about our great city, because Surrey is an opportunity city today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anita. We have lots of commonalities on some of the discussions that we're having about growing the life sciences sector in British Columbia. I think in the interest of time, we're going to move the Q&A to the networking, partially also because some of the Q&A questions are quite specific for some of the speakers. So I want to thank Natasha Campbell, Dr. Adrian Chan, Anita, Dr. David Llewellyn, Rowena Rosati, and Ann Woods for speaking. All of your presentations were excellent and very interesting. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, the event sponsors, Silicon Valley Bank and Stem Cell Technologies, speakers, supporters, Clinical Trials BC and the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research, and our event supporter, Surrey Board of Trade. Your support for these events is amazing. We really appreciate it, and it is what allows us to keep doing this. We always like to show what our upcoming events are. So Tim has just added it on the screen. We have a half-day session next week titled Canada and UK Foundations for Innovation. We're going to focus on the process of how products end up being listed in Canada, discuss some of the federal policies that are currently at play that will potentially impact access to innovative medicines within our country. And then something that we're super excited about is Sir John Bell, a Canadian, one of the three who has been knighted, is a Regis Professor of Oxford University, and he's going to come and talk about the UK life sciences strategy, and with Dr. Dermot Callagher, we'll discuss what are some of the learnings from the UK strategy that we should be thinking about applying in British Columbia and Canada. We then have a McCarthy's speaking series on June 3rd. We'll be focusing on some of the projects that the Digital Supercluster has funded that have transformational impact within our healthcare system. Once again, we will be doing a BC showcase at BioDigital, and we'll be attending the BioDigital conference on behalf of Life Sciences in British Columbia, so that we can continue to develop those business connections and promote our amazing ecosystem. And then we're going to have our summer social on the 24th. It will be virtual. We look forward to the day we can be back together in person, but we can still connect virtually. So again, thank you very much to all of the sponsors of this event and for all the supporters of Life Sciences BC. We're going to move to the networking now. All of our speakers and sponsors are either hosting a table or a lounge, so don't be shy. Please connect with them. Specifically, also those of you that had questions specifically for those speakers. As you go back into the lounge, remember to turn on your cameras and your microphones as you move into the lobby, and then you'll be able to see the fellow people at your table. When you want to move around, just click on an empty seat in a table and you'll be taken there through double clicking. And I think Remo has now added a feature that you asked to move into the table. So have fun, and thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.